Hello, welcome to Raymond Castile's Basement of Horror. We are still in our summer hiatus, but we're coming back for a special show because we have a few of the new Mego Tops monster figures. We're going to see the Hammer Phantom of the Opera, the Hammer Mummy, and the Hammer Plague of the Zombies. I ordered those three plus the Hammer Gorgon, which was canceled. They refunded the orders and canceled that figure. I did not order the Grim Reaper, the generic Grim Reaper, or the generic Hunchback of Notre Dame. And as I've said before, I say Notre Dame, not Notre Dame, so sorry. But anyway, I didn't order the Hunchback or the Grim Reaper, so you won't be seeing those, unfortunately. This is what they look like. So there's a picture of them, but I did not order those figures. And I might talk a little bit later about why I didn't order those, but let's focus on the ones I did order. Here is the box. Here we go, some lovely packing material. Oh, I forgot to put my shock monster up, didn't I? Oh well. Oh, I should say, hey, before you get into this, what do you think of these? So these are modern Topstone pulls, which means they're made from vintage molds, but these are not production examples from Topstone from back in the day. They originate from vintage Topstone molds that were rescued years ago. And these were painted by Mikey Severe. Mikey Severe, who participated in our Bleak Sunday event last year. He has a YouTube channel with a lot of interesting content, so you should take a look at it. And he also has videos about mask painting, a lot of interesting, entertaining videos about mask painting. Also on his Facebook profile, he posts mask painting videos. So, and a lot of time-lapse stuff where he condenses several hours of painting into a minute, and he did that with one or both of these, where he had a time-lapse video showing the whole process of painting these things really fast. Here they are, very cool, wonderful colors, beautiful paint job. And these might turn up in another video later in the year, we'll see. There might be some other videos where these are presented with more focus on them. But right now they're just keeping me company over here. Okay, so back to the tops. Here we go. Here we go. Well, let's start with I think the weakest of the three. So this is the Herbert Lom Phantom of the Opera. You can see his nice scarred face there and his fairly elaborate costume. And on the back, one nice thing about these, they all have the correct characters on the back. Sometimes that's a problem with Mego. They have these random, odd characters on the back of the card that don't represent the character depicted by the toy. But that's not the case here. All the art on the back is correct. Nice Hammer movie poster art. So, it's a nice figure, but I said we were going to start with the weakest one. I do think this is the weakest of the three. And my reasons are, we'll start with the costume. The costume is obviously too big. It's too puffy and bulky. It looks like it's a couple sizes too big for him, especially around the neck. It makes the head look too small. But it is an elaborate costume. Really, if it fit him better, it would be very nice. But it's too puffy. I don't know why Mego abandoned the silk-screened jumpsuits, which, I mean, they in many other ways have kept very Mego-esque elements, but they dumped that one. But I feel like that's part of what made a Mego look like a Mego. So this is a very modern-looking figure. I wouldn't mind if they had been doing not if they just started with this figure, but all along since the reintroduction of Mego, if they had been giving us some silk-screened body stockings with some of the shirts and details printed on them, like in this case, if that had been the style since they came back, like with the Target Megos, I wouldn't mind if his shirt was a printed silk screen, and then the jacket was a separate piece over that. To me, that's what makes a Mego look like a Mego, or is part of what makes a Mego look like a Mego. And they're still doing that with the superheroes. They have a license for DC superheroes, not Marvel, and they still have some of that classic Mego style with the superhero costumes. But back in the day, something like this the shirt would have been silk screened, and he would have had a body stocking. Maybe the pants would be separate, maybe they wouldn't, and the only separate piece would be the jacket. And I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't want them to suddenly shift gears and start doing it with this figure, no. But if they had been doing that all along, from the Target days to the present, I think that would be a good thing. I think it would make these things look more like Megos and set them apart from NECA or Mezco. Why can't a Mego look like a Mego? It seems like that's what the whole point of the thing was, to have like a retro, nostalgic product that harkened back to the 70s Megos. But that would help the puffiness and the bigness of the costume. Now I think that the costume could have been designed like this, but just to fit better. I don't think it was inevitable that I had to look big like this. So the costume's an issue with me. It's nice that he has a mask. I like that. I've heard that the mask doesn't fit on him, or at least it doesn't stay on his head. So that's an issue. But at least he has a mask. I was going to compare this to the Distinctive Dummies custom Hammer Phantom 8-inch figure, but that figure has the mask permanently attached to his head. The mask is part of his head. And I was surprised. I'd forgotten that Distinctive Dummies had done that. So I'm not going to compare them because it's not a fair comparison. But that's one of the few missteps that Distinctive Dummies committed in their Hammer line was making the Phantom with a non-removable mask. Here, I appreciate that Mego gave him a removable mask, like they should. And if it doesn't quite fit on the face, well, at least he has an accessory. Now, so let's look at this face. Okay, I think this is where I have some disappointment. The face knocked that out of the park. I think I'd forgive the suit. I think the face is more the problem with me. The face, first of all, I don't really see Herbert Lom in the sculpt, but I mean, it's all disfigured, so that's not a big deal. It really should be a dark gray or bluish gray, dark color. It's too light, too fleshy. And he has this goatee. Now, other people have mentioned this goatee, and when I first saw the prototype, I said, why does he have a goatee? Then I looked at some movie stills and saw that, in fact, the character in the movie does have facial hair. I'd never noticed it before. I've seen the movie many times. I've seen photos from the movie many times, and I'd never noticed that he had facial hair until this toy, the prototype images of this toy came out. And then I compared to I saw the goatee on the toy, and I looked at the movie stills and said, well, what do you know? He does have a goatee. But the facial hair in the movie is very light. It's more like a Don Johnson, Indiana Jones kind of weak old beard than this very groomed goatee, this Shakespearean goatee that this figure has. So I don't know how you would leave the goatee in place but de-emphasize it in this format. Maybe not 12-inch, that would be easier to do. I know that it would be kind of hard to include the facial hair without it standing out the way it does. So I'm not sure how they could have handled that, but I don't think of the character as having that kind of facial hair. And in the makeup, the Roy Ashton makeup in the film, yes, he's got facial hair, but it's not this full groomed goatee that the toy has. So the disfigurement, the scars, they're acceptable. They're acceptable. I think it's mostly the head looks a little small. It's not the blue-gray dark color it should be. He has dark-colored skin, like a rotting corpse. It's all blue-gray, like this bruised color. And I wish they would have found a way to de-emphasize that facial hair, because even though the character in the movie does have facial hair, it doesn't pop like this goatee on this figure. It's not so noticeable. I'm not the only one who'd grown up watching this movie and never noticed that he had facial hair. A lot of people that I've seen online are surprised about that because it's a subtle element of the makeup. It doesn't stand out like the goatee on this toy. So I think the reason I'm being extra picky with this one is because this is the one, when I heard they were doing it, that I had high hopes for. Because I could imagine them really knocking it out of the park with this character. This is an opportunity for Mego to show what it can do with that disfigured face and the costume and an accessory with a mask. Everything, it really gives Mego an opportunity to step up and make a really classic, amazing figure. And I wanted to see what Mego was going to do with that opportunity. And I feel like they didn't quite live up to the potential that this character presented. That it's a little, it's a little lackluster. It's not bad, but it has some issues. It's not as good as it could have been. And so I think because I had expectations up here, maybe unreasonable expectations, the toy had a hard time living up to the expectations. But I do like the card art. It's, and all these Topps Hammer figures have this kind of art with the picture of the creature, the character on it, and then Mego symbol and the movie title. So that's a departure from what they'd been doing with other Hammer Mego figures. They'd been pursuing a Lincoln style format where there was an environment, like a forest or a castle or a laboratory on the side. So it was like the character in its environment, which is inspired, I would think, by the 70s Lincoln figures. And here they've done something different, and they've put a picture of the character on the card. And at least it's a photo from the movie. It's not like some weird cartoon or something like you see on some of the Universal licensed figures. The card's generally good. It's a good card. It's a good card. But some people have noticed that it has a Universal copyright and not a Hammer copyright. And I think some people feel that that's a mistake. Like Mego forgot to put the right copyright on it. I don't think so, because the Phantom of the Opera, just like Curse of the Werewolf and Evil of Frankenstein, Hammer's Phantom of the Opera was a co-production with Universal Studios. They got financing from Universal. They had a distribution deal with several films where Universal would set up the U.S. distribution ahead of actually shooting the film, and that helped Hammer finance the film. So these movies, and it wasn't just Universal, they did this with a number of studios, and at least in the U.S., the Hammer films have the logo of that studio at the beginning. So in this case, there's a Universal logo at the beginning of the Phantom of the Opera or the Curse of the Werewolf or Evil of Frankenstein. It depends what print you're looking at, but generally if it's a officially released Blu-ray or DVD in the United States, it's most likely going to have that U.S. studio logo on the front, because most of the Hammer horror films were co-productions. They got financing distribution from Hollywood, which is what enabled them to make these films. And when that U.S. co-financing dried up, and I think it was in the late 60s it started to dry up, and by the early 70s it was pretty much gone. That's when you start to see the decline of Hammer. Yeah, there were a lot of reasons why Hammer started going downhill, but that was also a big one, that they lost the Hollywood money. So I think when it comes to licensing merchandise for this stuff, Mego probably has to go through Universal to do it in the United States. It might be different in England, but I think in the U.S., a Phantom of the Opera or an Evil of Frankenstein or Curse of the Werewolf, and there were a few other Universal Hammer films. Those are the ones that I could think of at the top of my head, but there were at least that many more. There was like a half dozen or so of them. They probably have to go through Universal to license the merchandise in the United States, probably. So I think that's why you see the Universal logo and not, or the copyright, and not Hammer. We'll save this one. Let's take out the zombie next. Okay, so that's the Phantom, and he's a decent figure, but I think he is, I'll put you over here, the weakest of the three. And partly because I think I had the highest expectations of what that figure could be. But even the distinctive Dummies custom-made version was a little, it didn't have a removable mask. So even there, where you're dealing with a custom toy, the figure seemed to have presented some challenges. So maybe it's just a challenging character to present in the 8-inch format. I don't know. But anyway, here's the Plague of the Zombies. And let me see what... Okay, I was looking at the copyright on this one. Okay, so here's the zombie from Plague of the Zombies. There he is. Here's his lovely costume. Much simpler than the Phantom's costume, obviously. He has this potato sack kind of a costume. A burlap sack. A monk's robe, I guess. And there's the artwork. It's got the Hammer logo up there. It's got the title. I think that is the movie poster art. I mean, the font and everything. I think that's how the title is on the promotional material for the film. That's an interesting way to present the character on the card. I wonder why they chose that style. A little different from what they did with the Phantom. But anyway, the character is on the card. And here's the back. That's a nice image of all the, well, there's a lot more zombies than this in the movie, but that's a nice image of a group of zombies. And there's our star zombie. And that appears to be, the art on the front looks like it's created from that image. And this is one of the bad guys up here. This is one of the guys who controls the zombies. And I'm thinking he would make a great figure. I mean, yeah, it's kind of obscure, but if you're going to make Hammer figures anyway, you know, he's a possibility. He kind of lends himself to an action figure. He would look good as an action figure. So that's the back. And once again, we have appropriate art on the back. We have the correct characters on the back. And the copyright on this one is Hammer. It's not Universal. Let's see here. Hammer Films Legacy Limited. So it's got a Hammer copyright. Now, unfortunately, this one had arrived with a little dent there. This corner is dented. That's too bad. But not the end of the world. His head kind of reminds me of the Thriller Graveyard Gang. The color and the way it's painted. I'm trying to get his hands in there. It would have been nice to have monster hands on all of these. I think they were putting monster hands on the first Hammer figures, and they were giving the Universal monsters normal human hands. But these three all have normal human hands. I would have liked to have seen monster hands, the bigger groping hands. Because the first Hammer figures, like the Christopher Lee, Dracula, and Frankenstein's creature, I think they both have the big hands. So he looks very nice. He looks like the character. Can't complain. I mean, he looks like the poster art and the stills that you see of this character. He's the most iconic zombie in the movie. There's other zombies, but he's the kind of the star zombie, the hero zombie. He's the one that's has the money shots. He's the one in the promotional stills, and it looks like him. I don't know what else you can do. I mean, I don't know how you could have a better Mego style representation of this character. What more do you want? That's him. That's the Plague of the Zombies zombie right there. And the only thing I would say about his outfit, maybe the collar could be a little smaller. And rest more. I wish it rested flat on his shoulders instead of rising up over his chin like that. But I think if you took him out of the bubble and start posing him, I think you could fix that pretty easily. So that's not a big deal. But if I were going to complain about anything, that would be it. Otherwise, I mean, it's a great representation of this character. I don't know what else you can do. It's interesting that they made him. I'm glad they did. I do think he's one of the iconic Hammer monsters. And if you're going to make a line of Hammer monsters, you need to have the zombie. And it's a nice card. I mean, everything is as it should be. So there's not a lot you can say. I have more to say when there are things that are wrong. when everything's right, I can't really say much except, yeah, they did it. There it is. Looks good. So I'm happy with him. Okay, so here, now, finally we have the Mummy. And he's the best of the three, I think. This fulfilled my expectations for a Christopher Lee Hammer Mummy. I mean, that's the guy right there. That is the scary Christopher Lee Hammer Mummy that you do not want to meet. Much scarier than any of the Universal mummies. The Christopher Lee Mummy will find you. He will crash through the door, break the bars, break the window. He will get you. He will break your back, wring your neck. If you see him, run. But he doesn't just plod along. He can move fast. The Christopher Lee Mummy, he can move fast. So you got to run fast to get away from this guy. Now, does that look just like Christopher Lee? No. But I mean, given the character, bandage covered face like that, I think realistically, it's asking a lot to try to see Christopher Lee in that sculpt any more than what they've done here. I think that might be a stretch. In a 12-inch figure, yeah. In a Mego style 8-inch figure, I think this is pretty good. I think that's a pretty good representation of the Mummy. And he has a nice skeletal face, his sunken eyes. I mean, I like that. It looks, and I like Mego-esque style, like the Iron Man with the nose and all that. I like that. I like the kind of doll-like Mego style, and I think that this Mummy sculpt has that. And when I look at it under a magnifying glass, I see a little more Christopher Lee in the sculpt. Yeah, the more I look at it, the more I think if you're going to capture this character in this size, in this format, I don't think it's reasonable to expect much more than what we got. I think this is a very, very respectable interpretation of this character in this format. And I like these dark. He's muddy, like he should be. I think they're going to make a clean version. I don't need a clean version. This is the Hammer Mummy. He looks like this. He's all dark like this because he fell in a pond and got muddy. And they went the extra mile to make the torso clear, so you can shine a light behind him, and then the light will shine through these holes. And that mimics the poster art that shows light shining through the mummy's torso. And in the movie, he gets a spear shoved through him. So he does have a hole in him, and he gets shot a couple of times, I think, with a shotgun, and it's approximately the blasts are where these holes are in this toy. So there's attention to detail. It's screen accurate. He does have holes like that. He never has light shining through him in the movie, but he does on the poster art. He has light from behind. I think someone's got a torch or a flashlight or something, and it's shining light through his body, almost like a laser beam coming out. And that's why in the movie he gets a spear, I think it's a spear, shoved through him, is because I believe it was Peter Cushing not Christopher Lee, I think it was Peter Cushing, who didn't like the fact that the poster art depicted light shining through him, and there was nothing like that in the movie, and he wanted something added to the film to try to justify what people saw in the poster art. So he thought it was like false advertising. So after the fact, they added the shot of the spear going through his torso, so that the poster then was, kind of sort of accurate, because he now had a hole in him. I don't know if that story is apocryphal, or, I've heard it 100 times, that story, and then if you read anything about the film or listen to a commentary track or whatever, you're going to hear that story. Is it true? I don't know. But it's a nice story. And so that this clear torso and these holes in the bandages is there because of that poster art, because of the story of Peter Cushing wanting something in the movie that justified the poster art. And so the mummy has holes in him, so if you shined a light behind him, he theoretically, it would shine through him. This is an interesting costume. He's bandaged, not like that. It's not like bandages printed on a leotard, even though I just said I miss the screen printed, silk screened jumpsuit. When it comes to mummies, I like bandages. I like the Azrak Hamway Lincoln bandaged style. I like my mummy figures with actual bandages wrapped up all around them. And I'm glad that this mummy has bandages. It's not a costume that looks like bandages. He's actually bandaged up, and that's good. I like that. At least he appears to be bandaged up. Maybe it's just the way it looks. If so, then that's very clever the way they did it. But it looks like he actually does have bandages. I don't think any two of these look exactly alike. So that's also good that that kind of makes them look individual. And he has, so apparently there's like a wash of some kind of dark paint over the bandages that stiffens them up. So I hear that when you try to move them, it's a little difficult, but you can kind of break him in after you pose him. But it does change the look of the bandages a little bit, not necessarily for the worse. But once you start moving him, he doesn't look quite like he does when he's untouched on the card. It does change the look of the bandages a bit once they move around. He has some kind of, I've heard it called confetti. He has little squares on his costume. I don't know if they're glued to it, or I'm not sure how they're attached, but it's like someone took dark gray confetti and just kind of sprinkled it over. And that's odd. It gives it a nice texture. I don't know who thought of that, but it kind of gives him this speckled, lumpy appearance, that like something that had been in the mud and now has like bits of mud dried up. It's a clever way to do it. They took what appears to be dark confetti and sprinkle it over him, and maybe it was when the paint on the bandages was still wet. Maybe that, I don't know how they're holding on, but it does give it a nice texture. It looks different as long as you don't look too close. Once you start to think of it as confetti, then it kind of breaks the illusion. But if you don't look at it too closely, like I'm doing now, or it could be little bits of tape, I don't know. But it definitely adds to the texture. I hope all that stays attached, and like 10 years from now, I hope it's not all laying at the bottom of the bubble. But it is a clever way to give him texture. Just the whole costume has a lot of texture. Look at the sides of his legs, if you can make it out. Look at that. Look at the texture of the bandages on his legs. You don't get that anymore on toy mummies. So that's very welcome. That really, I mean, it nails that look of that muddy mummy in the movie. And that's a nice Mego style interpretation of Christopher Lee in that makeup. The artwork, it's Christopher Lee from the movie. There he is. So it's, you know, it's the appropriate character, and especially like this image on the back. That's one of the iconic shots of him in the movie. I think this is when the reincarnation of the princess is confronting him, and he's kind of ashamed of what he's become because he realizes who she is and she recognizes him, and of course he doesn't want her to see him this way, and it's a sad moment. And then he's about to kill Peter Cushing's character, but he stops because I think she's Cushing's wife in the movie, because she stops him. And he sees her as the reincarnation of his lost princess. And he's kind of sad and ashamed of what he is, and so he goes away. And I think that is that moment in the movie. And you can see that it's not just Christopher Lee with a bunch of bandages over him or mud. He actually has some kind of prosthetics giving him a skeletal face underneath the bandages. They didn't just take his normal face and just wrap it up. There's some kind of a mask or something giving him a certain mummified shape with protruding cheekbones and the lips and all that. So it's not as simple a makeup as you think. They didn't just wrap him up and splotch him up with gray goop. There's a mask involved that gives him a certain shape like an actual mummy. Only thing I don't like about the packaging is the logo, the mummy. The way that looks on both sides, front and back. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that the Universal style mummy? That lettering, that font, that logo, isn't that the Universal version? Isn't that the way it's presented on Universal Mummy merchandise? Maybe I'm wrong. I didn't look up the Hammer poster or compare it. I'm just my impression looking at it. It looks like the Universal logo. And I remember there was a Hammer Frankenstein toy a few months ago that had a Universal style Frankenstein logo. So that's something that's going on with some of these, is I think that they're taking Universal logos that they already have, like they already have Frankenstein and mummy figures that they put out. And I think they're just taking those elements and putting them on these cards. I don't know if Hammer is applying them with character logos, but I need to look that up and see. I think that's the Universal style mummy logo. I could be wrong, but just first glance, that's my impression. And the copyright on this guy is Hammer. It's not Universal. He has a Hammer copyright, which is kind of strange because I thought Warner Brothers controlled the licensing for the Mummy in the United States. I thought Warner Brothers had Horror of Dracula, Curse of Frankenstein, The Mummy, a couple other Draculas. I thought Warner Brothers had that. Am I mistaken? I think it's the right studio. So I would have thought, just like you saw the Universal copyright on the Phantom, that you'd see a Warner Brothers copyright on this. But no, it's a Hammer copyright on this Mummy. So it's interesting who handles what these different characters, who Is it Hammer? Is it Universal or some other studio? Who's got the control of the copyright? I like seeing the Hammer, the modern Hammer logo on all of this consistently. That is the modern Hammer logo. I like seeing that. And it's interesting to note that even though this is not a Universal mummy, it is Charis. Kharis. Charis. It's not Imhotep or some other mummy. It's Charis. So this, even though I know it's not Lon Chaney Jr., it's not Tom Tyler, but it is the character of Charis. The Christopher Lee mummy is Charis. Officially, he is supposed to be Charis. He's not Imhotep. He's not Claris. He's Charis. Or Charis. So this is the first Charis action figure in a long time. Yeah, it's not Lon Chaney Jr. It's not that Charis, but we'll take it. I mean, it's better than another Imhotep figure. All in all, I think they're 3 very nice toys. I have a few issues with the Phantom. I'm a little lukewarm on how he turned out, but he's not bad. He's just not as good as he could have been. The zombie and the mummy look great. Now, the Gorgon got canceled. They are going to put out a generic Gorgon. I suspect they're just going to take the toy that they were going to release as a Hammer Gorgon and just release it without the licensing. I'm thinking that's what they're going to do. I don't know. The sculpt that they showed as the prototype did not look like the movie character. It did not look like the Hammer Gorgon, so they could very easily just put that out as a generic Gorgon without the Hammer licensing and probably get away with it. That's probably what they're going to do. But I wanted to show you, since we don't have, since that figure got canceled, as a substitute. This is the distinctive Dummies Hammer Gorgon. This is a custom-made figure from a few years back, a limited edition. And that is the Hammer Gorgon from Distinctive Dummies. Now that looks like the movie character. That actually looks like the actress in the makeup seen in the movie. She has a pretty basic outfit, but a really good head, really detailed. So especially from that angle, that really looks like a still from the movie. Here's the artwork. Sometimes Distinctive Dummies has weak artwork, but not this time. With their Hammer line, they tend to get it right, because they use poster art instead of original art, and it looks like professional industrial illustration. Here's some of the other characters that were in this line. I mean, there's a lot more than these 4, but Distinctive Dummies put these out in groups of 4. And there's that Phantom, which I was going to show to compare to the other Phantom, but the Distinctive Dummies Phantom has a non-removable mask. I was very surprised. I'd forgotten that until I looked at it tonight, which I think was a mistake on Distinctive Dummies' part. I think they should have made that mask removable. I think anytime you're making the Phantom of the Opera, if you're making a serious toy of that character, make the mask removable. Come on. I think that's just, you just got to do it. I don't think you've got a legit Phantom toy if the mask doesn't come off. That's part of the character. And if you can't make the mask removable, then have an alternate head, like Sideshow did. They had, with the Cheney Phantom, they had masked and unmasked heads, and you could swap them. So there's a rare case where Distinctive Dummies fell short. Usually they knock it out of the park, but not with the Phantom in this line. That was one of the very, very few figures in this line that wasn't quite right. And the Mego Phantom isn't quite right. So we have a history now of companies stumbling a bit with that Hammer Phantom. I wonder if NECA, they do have a Hammer license, but they haven't revealed any toys, based on that license yet. If they do a Phantom, I'm sure they'll give it like an alternate head if it's part of their Ultimates collection, or even if it's the retro cloth one. It'll have either a removable mask or an alternate head if they make a Phantom. I don't know if they will. I kind of doubt that they'll go that deep. But are they even going to do anything with that license? Because they haven't yet. So, but if they do, it'd be interesting to. Will they finally be the one to knock it out of the park with that Hammer Phantom? Because Mego didn't quite do it. Distinctive Dummies didn't quite do it. Maybe NECA will do it. I don't know. Maybe they'll be the company to get it right. But that's just one complaint. I mean, Mego's done very well with these Hammer figures by and large. I don't think there's any that I was really disappointed in. I think the only one so far where I had some issues was that Phantom. I'm trying to think if was there another character previously. I don't think so. I don't remember another Mego Hammer character where I looked at it and said, yeah, that's just not right. They missed the mark on this one. They've done very well with all the Hammer figures. Sometimes the packaging and the card art isn't quite right, but the figures so far have been great. All the Hammer figures have been great. And even this Phantom is still okay. It's not as good, I think, as it should have been, but it's not bad. Well, I guess I could give you some thoughts on the whole Tops thing, but honestly, I'm just exhausted by the whole deal. I don't feel like sitting here for another 15 minutes talking about what I think of the Tops deal. That was months and months ago. Just to sum it up, I'm not happy with the way it all went out. I mean, who is? Is anyone really happy with how it all worked out? But I don't think I want to dissect it right now. We got the toys. They're here. We have the figures that we ordered. Let's just leave it at that. Maybe in the future I might have more to say, but I'm tired. I'm fatigued. I don't really need to hash all that out. We have the toys. And from what I've seen, they're not bad. I mean, we've seen the ones I've got, but other ones that other people have ordered, Star Trek, superheroes. I don't know if I've seen any of the apes yet. I don't know if those are shipped yet. Like the mutant, I don't think I've seen anyone unbox that yet. So they may not have shipped yet, but the ones we've seen so far all look fine. I mean, they look great. No problem. The bodies with these bandless bodies are smaller than the previous standard Mego body. I don't like that. I don't know why people are so in love with bandless bodies. I like the old-fashioned Mego body with the rubber bands or the elastic bands strung together. What's wrong with that? I mean, I like that. I've never been a big fan of bandless bodies. I don't feel like it's necessary. And they have a different look. And I like the charm of bodies that are strung together like dolls. I don't know, and how their arms splay outward a little bit, and their legs are kind of parted. They're usually not. They don't hold their arms close to their sides. They don't hold their legs together. They're kind of spread out. That's part of the charm. I like that. I don't have a problem with that. But most people want bandless bodies, so now they're getting bandless bodies. Okay, great. They're a little short though, a little small compared to the previous ones. What else can we say about this? Oh, why didn't I order the Hunchback or Grim Reaper? Because when these things were offered, they would unveil them on the Topps website every Monday, I think. Every Monday. And you had 1 week to order them, and then they were gone, and then you lost your opportunity. So it was early October. They unveiled the Hunchback and Grim Reaper, and I knew, okay, October is going to be their monster month. They're going to be unveiling monsters every Monday this month. Can I afford that? Can I afford all of those figures, however many that would be, like 8 or whatever? Can I afford that right now? And the shipping was expensive. The figures cost a little more than the normal Megos you buy at the store, and the shipping cost quite a bit more. So these were priced at a premium. And they were not cheap. You're basically paying NECA prices for these Mego figures. Well, I thought I better pace myself. Do I really want this Hunchback and Grim Reaper? If they were in a regular assortment, like at Target or Walmart, yeah, I'd go ahead and buy them. But under the circumstances, no, they're not necessary. I want to wait and see what else comes out. I don't want to spend all my money early on and then be in a bind where I just cannot afford to buy even one more, and then they come out with some amazing toy that I've just got to have, and I end up sinking into a financial quicksand, overextending myself, spending too much. I didn't want to do that. So I restrained myself. I said, I don't need this Hunchback or this Grim Reaper. It's not important. So let's see what else they come out with. And I think I made the right decision because the Hammer figures were much more important to me. And I thought probably we're going to see some Hammer or Universal characters that I definitely will want to buy. So I'm not going to blow my money this soon, right at the first week of the month, when there's going to be a whole month of monsters. So I did not order the Hunchback or the Grim Reaper. I don't think I'm missing a whole lot, but if they had been part of a regular assortment, I would have bought them then. The fact that I only had 1 week to buy them, and I knew that all of the subsequent monsters that month I would only have 1 week to buy, and there wasn't any flexibility, there wasn't any time to do anything else. It's either here they are, do you want them or not? Because of that, I had to walk away from those first 2. Now they are going to put out an alternate version of the Grim Reaper, and I think its face is all black. It doesn't have the skull face. And an alternate Hunchback. It's really a completely different figure, so they're not really salvaging the Topps Hunchback in any way. They're putting out a brand new figure. New head, new costume. They're going to be making alternates of maybe all of these tops, certainly most of them, from what I understand, when those retail versions come out, maybe I'll have more to say about everything now, but I think really all I need to say is just to explain why I don't have the Hunchback and the Grim Reaper. So that's why. Okay, I think that's enough. So we'll now return to our summer hiatus. But I'll pop back in if something like this comes up and there's a new monster toy or something to talk about. Now, I do plan on doing another live stream very soon. I did one last year, about this time of year, and I am going to, my plan is to do another one probably this month. This is June, so by the time you see this, I might have a date firmly established. And when I do, I'll post that, let you know. But I will do a live stream in the near future, so be watching for that. And I think that's the next time you'll see me. So until then, thanks for watching. Basement of Horror will return.